Welcome to Kindred, hosted by me, Kate, and my sister, Jen. In this podcast, we explore our human relationship to the natural world. In connecting to this planet, we also connect to understanding, compassion, and empathy. How can we see ourselves not as separate or above animals in nature, but a critical and integrated part of an active ecosystem? Through conversations with animal advocates, scientists, conservationists, and many others, we look to inspire a new awareness of how and why we connect to animals and nature in order to repair and restore our relationship to the natural world. Hello and welcome to Kindred. How is everybody today? How is your day going, Miss Jenny?
My day is going well. I've already had a couple meetings, just getting some stuff done.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds high-powered and very fast, just really interesting stuff too. Same. Had some meetings today.
Nice.
And although I find you and I tragically interesting and dynamic, I will say we have a lot to cover today. So
yes.
We're not going to blah, blah, blah you today. I know it's usually interesting, to say the least.
To say the least.
Yeah, but we do have, there's a lot to cover. And so I'm just going to jump right on in. So today we have a lot to cover, and I want to get right into our interview and the deep dive we take into the world of plants. It's a really important conversation, and I think one that needs to be continued not only through our generations, but through and from diverse communities around the world. I think it's a topic that embodies the great need for a deeper understanding of the absolute intelligence that lives in and on this planet, and there's no better time to be listening and learning from those ones that are working to give us access to this knowledge, whether it be human or plant or animal. But, you know, it makes me think about, in this plant community, do we really even understand that without them, we don't exist, right? And what do they give us on a daily basis? But what else? We have some understanding of what they do for us, but there's much more to learn. So that brings us to our guest today. We are speaking with Dr. Monica Gagliano, a research associate professor of evolutionary ecology at Southern Cross University in Australia, where she is the director of the Biological Intelligence Lab. Monica has also traveled to parts of the world where she has received knowledge from indigenous communities and the plants they live with. And she has written a book about her experience with plant intelligence and the science that has come from those studies, called Thus Spoke the Plant, a remarkable journey of groundbreaking scientific discoveries and personal encounters with plants. And the foreword was written by Suzanne Simard, with a review by Robin Wall-Kimmerer. It's a really fascinating book. I highly recommend reading it. I got a lot out of it, and it was great. So, and we talk about it a little bit in the interview. So we'll be speaking with Monica about plant intelligence, sensitivity, decision making, and memory, and more. So this week we are doing our first two-parter. Woohoo! And we'll be dropping part 2 today as well. So no waiting on that. I hate it when I have to wait for part 2.
It's the worst. Yeah. You're so nice. I was hoping that's what you were going to say.
Yeah. So it's all dropping today. But let's head over to part 1 with Monica Gagliano. Monica, welcome to Kindred, and thank you so much for joining us here today. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Thank you for having me. And I'm Monica Gagliano. At the moment, I'm a research associate professor at the University of Southern Cross. which is in Australia. And there I direct a lab called the BI Lab for Biological Intelligence, which is funded by the Templeton World Charity Foundation. And what we do there, or mostly outside of there, because there is the environment outside mostly, we look at intelligence in systems which are not your traditional systems. So intelligence in systems that don't have neurons, don't have brains. They are, we're talking about plants, sponges, slime molds, and all sorts of critters, whatever we can get our hands on, basically, that doesn't have a brain will do. And but of course, I'm very interested in the bigger question of what intelligence really is and why it should be important for us to look at it at this time. And also, I'm also very curious and interested in questioning science itself as a practice. So,
well, I got this quote from your website where it says, it's a quote starting, "My main research is broadly focusing on key aspects of the ecological processes by which organisms are able to gather information on the variable conditions of their surrounding environment in order to thrive." And I love that. And it takes me right into like the forest where there's like a little seedling just starting to grow and find its light and water and gathering information and how it can coexist and why it is growing even to begin with. And it makes me think about how you came to science and the experiences that you've had with plants. So what got you started on this path?
I think I've been a scientist since ever, really. I did. I grew up in Italy, and when I was in primary school, we did this little experiment with borlotti beans, and I'm sure I hope they still do it in schools where they tell you to put like 2 layers of cotton wool and put the beans in the middle, put the water, keep watering, and then just watch what happens. So you have the 2 layers of cotton wool, you put the seed in the middle, you keep watering, and then you watch what happens. And of course, the seed starts germinating, and then if you watch long enough, you will see a full-fledged plant coming out.
Right.
I did this experiment like everyone else at school. I was probably, I don't know, 7, 8, something like that, maybe even younger. And then many years later, I found, when I was cleaning up things at my parents' house, where I don't live anymore for a long time, I found this little booklet. And there were my notes of like day 1, nothing. Day 2, still nothing. And day 3, I think that there is something, And of course, I mean, that to me, I go often back to that idea that to me, that is really the foundation of science. It's like you don't go in expecting to see anything in particular. You go in with the curiosity of being amazed, really, and being surprised as well. I mean, that seed, that little one borlotti bean could have also been one that was never going to germinate. But the fact that it did it's actually quite magical. It's not given, we shouldn't give it for granted just because you put borlotti beans in the middle of 2 cotton wool layers and you put some water, that life sprouts out of it. But it does often. And that to me is remarkable. Yeah.
That is remarkable. And some of the stuff that I've read that you've written, you use language in context to plants like learning and remembering and memory and choosing, which to me adds up to an intelligence, right? Or a kind of awareness to self and other or another. Can you give a definition of what you feel is intelligence in the plant community?
I can give my own take on what I think intelligence is. I think the major struggle that we've been having in the conversation within the academic space has been the everyone likes to define these big words in whatever way.
Yeah.
And we don't really agree on what we mean. So when we have conversation and we even argue against each other, we often assume that the other person has exactly the same definition that you have. And unless those definitions in a way, they are personal. And so unless those personal definitions are put on the table to start with, the conversation can go very strange. Anyway, so for me, I like the etymology of words, and I go back to the root of that word, and from Latin, and it basically just means to choose between. So anything, anybody, I should say, that is able to choose between, it means that he needs to, or she needs to recognize some difference. So it needs to sense and perceive something. Then it needs to recognize that that something is different from something else. And then it needs to decide, literally, what to do with that bits of information. And in the case of animals, for example, often that comes out as behavior that we see through movement. But that's not necessarily the only action that we can take. Sometimes we are not moving at all, and yet a lot of things are happening inside in response to something that we have perceived. And sometimes this perception is not even conscious, even with us. So in general, I feel that, to me, the idea that others can choose as we do between, it's not anything special. Like, it's a fundamental of what life is about. You are not going to survive very long if you can detect your surrounding and then make the appropriate decision of how to engage with it. So whether you're a plant, whether you're a bacteria, whether you're a dog, a human being, it doesn't really matter what you are. The fact that you are life has this tendency of being intelligent.
Right. Absolutely. And, and in thinking of that and applying that to general public and science, like, why do you think people in general and more specifically science, like, balk at the idea of a higher intelligence in the plant world and community?
Well, there is the assumption, as we said, it's all about how we define our parameters of conversation. And often, because the question of intelligence has been, for a long time, it's been the realm of psychology. And psychology has been the realm of the human psychology, really. Yeah, and only more recently, we included some animals, not all of them, just some of them. And then even more recently, we have dared of including machines. Just because all of the things that these have in common is a brain, whether made of biological matter or artificial, and a nervous system, a neural system that is either, again, biological in nature or artificial neural networks in machines. So this is even this inclusion of the machine is kind of recent as well. So to then include systems that don't have these prerequisite as we have defined them. So it's like you either have to have a brain and a neural system, or you can't be part of this club. Right. Then all of those that don't really have those structures are completely and automatically, by definition, are already excluded. But what's happening is that over the last few decades, we have seen, in the case of plants, but not only, in slime molds, bacteria, viruses, all sorts of creatures are showing us through the science. And when scientists have given the space for these creatures to show themselves, they're showing us that they actually are as capable as any other system of making decision, or perceiving, of communicating what they have perceived to others. And this is all part of the realm of, the intelligent realm, I guess, so the cognitive realm. So because cognition is another big word, and in a way, it's very close to intelligence, because for me, again, if you go to the etymology of the word, cognition is to know. Right. And to know is like, it means, again, you're perceiving, you're sensing, and then you're making a sense of what you sensed. Yeah. And so, And by doing that, you can share that information, communication between like your own kind and others, other species, or you can act in one way or another, depending on what the information is about. If it's an information about potential predators, you wanna act and recruit help if you can, act by defending yourself. I mean, this is like a basic 101 life. And that's why the question is being always based on, or the questioning of intelligence in other systems that are non-neural is always being, and still unfortunately seems to be stuck on, oh, but there is no brain, therefore it cannot be. But it's like, but who made the assumption? This is a big assumption, and who made that assumption in the first place? Right. And as with every assumption, why this assumption still remains unquestioned.
Yeah.
And not questioning assumption is very dangerous, because we end up in places which are so far away from the evidence that is right in front of our nose.
Yeah.
And this evidence is piling. And yet there are some who are still insisting that we cannot talk about intelligence in plants, for example. Plants cannot choose, or plants don't have behaviors because they don't have brains and neurons. It's like, and?
Yeah, right, exactly. And so that leads me to my next question, which is, can you tell us the story of how and why you came to do the experiment with 56 little mimosa plants? Can you tell us about that experiment? I absolutely loved this.
Well, in the context of what we were just discussing before, as I said, for us, it's been very easy to recognize, at least in some animals, the same or similar kind of intelligence that inhabits us. And the reason that is because these animals not only have similar features, but also they move. And so we can easily empathize really with, like, oh, we know that if there is something that is scaring us, we run away from it.
Yeah.
Or if it's something that we really love, we go towards it. So to see a bird or a dog doing that, naturally, we intuitively know what's happening, even if we haven't done any science. Right. And then, of course, we can do the science, and the science can show, oh, yeah, when there is a danger, this animal does this and that. But the movement and the action is what we recognize, because it's what we do. We are also animals of that same kind that move really quick and react to the environment.
Yep.
Now, with plants, the major issue is been that for a long time, they've been assumed to be unmoving and unmovable.
Right.
And it's funny because this is clearly not true. And you don't need any science to demonstrate this. Like we have all seen climbing plants, taking over spaces. We have all seen flowers opening, closing at different times, sunflowers turning literally. So these are all movements, but they're taking place over a larger, longer time scale than we are used to, and many animals use. Right. So we have a very short time scale in our action. Plants have a relatively longer time scale. And this is almost like we are inhabiting two different worlds. And so for a long time, we couldn't understand, in a way, we couldn't appreciate that, well, we are inhabiting, in terms of movement, we are inhabiting two different worlds in time scales. And that's why we're not overlapping and we're not seeing each other. Mm-hmm. But we can also, because we are intelligent, on both sides, we can also come closer to each other and appreciate someone speaking a different language, even if we don't understand the language, right?
Yeah.
So in the same way, we can get closer to a plant and maybe trying to adjust our own time scale to get closer to the time scale of a plant. And then the plant will totally be seen as, oh yeah, they move.
Yeah. So
movement was the key. And there are a few plants that we know of that literally move to a time scale that is closer to our time scale. So these are the plants who are coming closer to us rather than us going closer to them.
Right.
So, and Mimosa, of course, is one of those, because Mimosa is also called the sensitive plant, the don't touch me or touch me not. And the reason is very simple. Anybody who has seen this plant would know, like, you touch the leaves and the leaves will just fold and close.
That's right.
And this happens within like literally, you can see it with your eyes. You don't need like speed cameras or anything.
You don't need to do time lapse.
So, that's right. That's right. You don't need to sit there and wait for hours to see a glimpse of movement.
Yeah.
So in that sense, Mimosa was the perfect model, the perfect plan to bridge that gap, those two worlds. And because she lives in the worlds of plants, but she can bridge and bring that time scale closer to our own time scale. And so the experiment with Mimosa was done, and Mimosa was chosen exactly for this reason, because it was in a way, it was the most animal-like plant that one can find.
Yeah.
And the idea was very simple. It's like these plants react very quickly to the environment, and it will close if there is danger, or if perceived danger, I should say.
Right.
And that's very useful for a plant, because when this plant closes, it looks quite miserable.
Right.
It looks much smaller. It's got spines underneath the leaves. So it looks like if I was an herbivore wanting to chew on this, it'd be like, oh God, it's like, is it worth my effort? And plus there are all these spines, you know?
Right.
And if that wasn't enough, the mimosa will also droop and in a way play dead. So it would look like this is a really miserable plant. It's kind of like probably not very nutritious. I'm not going to bother and go somewhere else.
Yes.
So of course the plant will return to full life as soon as the herbivore is gone.
Right.
So it makes total sense. What it doesn't maybe doesn't appear straight away clear is the fact that the plants need to sense the arrival of this threat.
Right.
So it's sensing, it's responding first with a kind of cautionary, and then if the situation is really bad, he engages with an even more obvious behavior like, don't come here, I'm not appetizing. And then of course he needs to also sense when the danger is over, and it will return to itself.
Right.
Now all of this behavior, like in all other systems, are very expensive energetically. You know, it's a lot of energy, close, droop, reopen, and so,
right.
And not only that, but when in the case of these plants, when they're closing their leaves, they can't photosynthesize as good as they can when they're fully open, obviously. Mm-hmm. So in a way, photosynthesis is part of their alimentation, so food.
Right.
So in a way, it's like they are sacrificing, for the sake of protection, they're sacrificing the opportunity of feeding on sunlight. So there is a trade-off between, is it worth for me to close?
Yes.
Because if the danger is real, it's worth, because otherwise I'll just get eaten and die.
Right.
But I need to weigh how worth that is compared to the cost of not feeding on light. Because if I stay closed for too long, then I will die because I'm not feeding on light. Mm-hmm. And they're doing all of these evaluation, basically, like, okay, what do I do? Again, as you can see, there are choices to be made, evaluation and a balancing act, which is the same that we all have to do as animals as well.
Yep.
So the question was, and this happens everywhere we have seen, including ourselves, the question is like, if we as humans were to react to every single stimulus that arrives and is present in our environment, we would be dead within no time.
Right.
Because you would waste all your energy reacting constantly to everything, because we're surrounded by all sorts of stimuli all the time.
Right.
So what we do, and what everyone that we have looked at does, we ignore it. We learn, like, the stimulus arrived the first time and it's new, and you're like, oh, what was that? And then if it's repeated enough time and you see that nothing happens, you start ignoring it, and literally your own system just cuts it out. You don't hear it anymore.
Right.
Just think about the humming of the fridge in the kitchen, or noises like the air conditioner. You know, you're not going to be worried about that noise until the air conditioning is switched off. You know, it's the air conditioning, nothing is going to happen unless it catches fire.
Right. And if a car drives by me enough times, I know that I don't have to leap out of the way in total terror because I think I'm going to get hit by a car every time. You learn.
That's right.
Behavior. Right.
That's right. So this kind of learning, which is the most basic, and even the word basic is questionable because we don't really understand it as good as the word implies, but it's called habituation. And it's a saving grace, It's like, otherwise, can you imagine? You will be fried if you had to respond to everything all the time.
That's
Well,
right.
and our nervous systems would be completely overloaded.
That's right. That's right. We will be dead in no time.
Yeah.
Because
right.
you will just use all your energy
Exactly.
and we know how dangerous stress is.
Yeah.
And when we are stressed, we know straight away, and that's like over time. But if you were to really take notice of everything, you would be dead soon.
Yeah.
So the entire system is geared to allow you to learn and then ignore what is not worth your attention.
Yeah.
So the experiment with Mimosa, sorry, is a big thing, but it's just so that all of the building blocks are there.
It's fascinating.
Because the experiment with Mimosa was exactly that. It's like, it makes no sense for a plant or for any organism not to be aware of their environment, evaluate what's worth paying attention to and respond and be aware of, and what is not worth it, and don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So the example of the experiment with Mimosa was exactly to test habituation in a plant. And so in that case, I created this contraption and I needed to find something that the plant didn't know already. Otherwise, is the sound of the air conditioner, and like, oh yeah, it's just the air conditioner. So I needed to find something that for the plant in a life of a plant was not already been experienced before. And so I just created this system to drop them. Because plants don't really get dropped, right?
They're kind of like on these slides that you release and they drop quickly, right? And
that's right.
Not too far, but yes, right.
That's right. And I should say, like, it wasn't like a major drop, and it was coming like the plants will land on some soft foam, and
that's
so.
Right.
I always say no plants were hurt in the process of this experimentation.
I appreciate it. When I was reading about this story, I'm like, I was glad to know how they just had a soft landing every time. That was nice to know.
That's right. But the impact is enough to get them like, whoa, startle, basically.
And so
the startling is important because it's that first moment of like, what is this? Yeah. And then if you repeat it, you see in plants, like everywhere else, and this is what Mimosa did, it's like after a while, the plant is kind of like, wait a second, I think I worked this out and I don't have to worry about it because nothing of concern for my survival is happening after this drop. It's just a drop. It's really annoying, but it's just a drop. It's whatever is happening right now. Right. So in the case of the Mimosa in the experiment, I looked at the literature, of course, in the animal literature, and I decided to do a train. That's how it's called technically. A train of 60 drops consecutive, one after the other, and then a pause, and then you do it again. And the idea was that, when you look in the literature for animals, that looked like a more or less a good number for testing.
Right.
And but the Mimosa had to surprise me already from the beginning because after the first few drops, the Mimosa of course, at the first drop closed the leaves and it was like, oh, wow, what is this?
Yes.
The Mimosa started reopening the leaves after a few drops. So I'm still there dropping it for 60 times because that's what the schedule said. And yet after the first 6 drops, the Mimosa was already like, yeah, oh God. We are doing this. Okay, here's another of those scientists that really don't understand and they had to test, So.
And she's like, my leaves are open. Okay, do you get it now?
Did you get it? Exactly.
Okay, all right, one more time.
So
cute.
And the interesting bit was then, of course, you repeat that train during the day several times. And the interesting part of this was that I had 2 groups because, as I said, they need to evaluate between potential or perceived danger and light because it's the food.
That's right.
So I had mimosas where the light environment was quite poor. It was the minimum.
Yeah.
And then there were other mimosas where there was plenty of light. So as you would expect, and we see this in students, if you don't have a deadline and if you're not a little stressed, you kind of take it easy and maybe you learn, but there is no pressure. Yeah. But you need a little bit of pressure to actually perform. We know that. Not stress, but a little pressure.
That's right.
And so the mimosas were exactly like students at school. If they had a little pressure, which was the environment is not optimal,
Yeah.
light is a premium, light is a special thing, and there is not much of it. So if you keep closing and it's not useful to protect you, you're actually wasting energy because you're not feeding light on light.
Right.
And so those plants learned faster
Wow.
than the ones that they were in plenty of light. Don't worry about it. They also learned, but they took a bit longer.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. It's like there is no
Right.
pressure about learning this. And the other interesting thing about that experiment was that then, after the learning was established, of course, you had to also test to make sure that it's not an artifact of something else. And
Yeah.
for example, you had to make sure that the leaves are not just open again because the plants is completely exhausted and it can actually physically keep them closed.
Yeah. Right.
And so what you do is you do a dishabituation test. That's the technical term. And basically what it means is like you need to present a new cue, a new stimulus that is coming from the outside, as if like, there was the air conditioning first and now your fridge start buzzing.
Yeah.
So if your fridge never buzzed before, you might be habituated to your air conditioner, but suddenly the fridge is like, oh, what is that noise? And you need to pay attention because maybe the fridge is about to blow up. Yeah. So the same way, and you can only do that if you are actually aware of what's happening and you're not exhausted. If you are exhausted, you just cannot respond anymore. And we know well that when we are, we are exhausted ourselves, like I can't do anymore.
Yep.
So in the case of the plant, so I presented a stimulus that needed to be of the same kind. So in that case, a mechanical nature, because the drop is a mechanical stimulus,
Right.
but not the drop, something else. And so instead of dropping them, I put them on a shaker plate and I shook them. And this was like a very brief, otherwise there is a risk that the plant is habituating to that.
Right.
And so you do it very briefly and one off. You only do it once.
Yeah.
Because again, otherwise the plants are, oh yeah, this is the same as the other thing. It's just nothing happens. And we know now from experience with the initial experiment that the plants are learning pretty quick. So it's like, I don't have much time to get them to do the thing.
That's right.
And of course, with this new stimulus, the plant closes its leaves
Right.
as it should, because it's like, well, I haven't learned this yet. I don't know if this is danger. And so they close the leaves. And then what you do, you retest them immediately after with the old stimulus, so the drop again.
Yes.
And so in theory, if they've learned and it's true learning, you should be able to drop them. And the plant is like, yeah, this one I know. I've learned that.
Yeah.
And so they should keep the leaves open. And that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
So they learn that the drop is meaningless. Within a few drops, they learn that.
Yeah.
Then you present something new and they respond appropriately by like acting as they should. Close your leaves because you don't know, this could be dangerous.
That's right.
And then you present again the drop, which is the known quantity. And they're like, yeah, this is known quantity. We know nothing happens. I don't have to worry about this.
So cool.
And so I keep feeling light and I don't have to stress out.
Yeah.
And this is not the end, because then I thought, okay, how long can you remember this?
Right.
How long for? And so I left them in their own little environment for 28 days. And I actually divided the two groups that I had into 4. So from each group, the plants in low light, half of them stayed exactly where they were, and the other half were swapped into the good light environment.
Right.
And the same for the other group, like the plants that were in good light, half of them stayed there, and the other half ended up in the crappy environment with low light. So now suddenly you have learned something that you learned in a different environment where you are now. So do the same rule apply?
Yeah.
Should you still ignore it the same way? And what would you do? And so after 28 days, I retested all the plants. And what I found is that the ones that were left in the environment that they knew, they responded exactly as they did, as if I just finished doing the training like 5 minutes before. Wow. So they remember perfectly.
That's incredible.
The ones that I swapped in the two environments, the plants that went from the good environment to the crappy environment with low light, they suddenly picked up and they responded much faster.
Interesting.
And that you would expect, because suddenly there is pressure on, there is a deadline, like you need to perform.
Yeah.
So there is that. The interesting bit for me was that the plants that went from the low light environment, and now suddenly they found themselves in a really good environment with lots of light, they do not relax. They do not just like, oh, now I can chill. No, they respond exactly as they learn to respond. And I think the reason for that is because the change in environment has happened once. You come from an environment that you know what it means to be under demand, like under pressure.
Yeah.
And if the environment has changed once, it can change again.
Yeah.
And so I better keep my,
Yes.
my wits I better stay where I am. And,
yeah, right. Wits
yeah,
about
exactly.
them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if any minute the environment will change and turn back to what it was.
Right.
And
which makes
so
sense.
as you can see,
they've got the memory from their experience, and they've learned from their experience. So they're going to take that into the new environment,
precisely,
which is what we all do. So you take what you learned into the new environment, and you're like, but then what happens, right?
Precisely. And that's the thing, is like what it shows as well, which we know well, if you have had very stressful experiences, and then they put you in a good environment where there is no stress and you are looked after and all of that, it takes a long time for people, for animals as well of other kind, like dogs, and mistreatment. We know what mistreatment does. Is it takes a long time for the system to actually like, oh, I'm okay and it's safe. And there is always a part at the end that says like, yeah, but it could turn bad again. And so that memory is useful in a way, also, for plants. And of course, because I think everyone, wherever we have looked, habituation exists and it makes sense. So this was the first experimental evidence of course, learning in plants and memory. Like memory, the plants know how to germinate because the spring is coming.
Right.
Or not the memory of a sunflower that is like, oh yeah, I know the sun is coming out at this time and therefore I turn my flowers, because that's a slightly different process. There is a clock in all of us, and is connected to the circadian rhythm. So we also wake up more or less at the same time because we have our own clock. And that's why when we are jet lagged, it's terrible, because our clock gets offset.
Exactly.
But this kind of memory is the same kind of memory that we have when we talk about, experiences and memories of things of the past that are useful for us to then do what we do in the future or in the present even.
To how to survive and thrive, to do the best we can.
Thrive, that's right.
Hey guys, that's the end of part 1 with Monica, and we'll see you back for part 2, dropping now. Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jen, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And feel free to contact us through our website at kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find links to our socials, Patreon page, and show notes. Welcome to Kindred, hosted by me, Kate, and my sister Jen. In this podcast, we explore our human relationship to the natural world. In connecting to this planet, we also connect to understanding, compassion, and empathy. How can we see ourselves not as separate or above animals in nature, but a critical and integrated part of an active ecosystem? Through conversations with animal advocates, scientists, conservationists, and many others, we look to inspire a new awareness of how and why we connect to animals and nature in order to repair and restore our relationship to the natural world. Hello, and welcome back to Kindred and Part 2 with Monica Gagliano. If you haven't listened to Part 1, I strongly recommend you go back and catch up. And now, back to Part 2. See you for the takeaway. So, I just want to read a paragraph out of your book. It's called Thus Spoke the Plant, a remarkable journey of groundbreaking scientific discoveries and personal encounters with plants. And I just want to read this, and just bear with me for a second. You say, I felt so naive and at the same time so hideously parochial about the fact that my beliefs and my perceptions of the world were tinted by the stinky old anthropocentric bias, despite the amazing experiences I'd had that had taught me otherwise. How little do we truly know of our nature and the nature of those around us, human and non-human. We keep writing books about books that debate ideas of ideas about the fundamental processes of life, such as learning and remembering, which are found everywhere and all around us. Processes that are self-perpetuating and self-controlling with or without our ideas of them, stories about them, and debates over them. The case of Mimosa's learning is simply a no-brainer. Appreciating what Mimosa had accomplished requires no cerebral assumption to be applied, but rather the surrender of prejudices and biases that filter everything new we learn through the views we already hold. And I absolutely love that. And it makes me think of the, people who want to make all things human also with human characteristics or feelings in order to find a connection, right? And then they can care and have empathy. And the idea that if they are not like us, then I can't relate and I don't understand them. So I wanted to talk about anthropomorphizing plants and what depths of understanding and connection do we gain or lose to them and us by doing this?
Mm-hmm. So the answer, I guess, for me is paradoxical. And that's a good start. It's already a good place. For me, many might find the space of paradox very uncomfortable because it is by nature, and they might not want to sit there. But I think that it's a useful practice. So what I'm about to say is going to contradict itself, but it's okay. And I'm doing it, consciously. So on one side, I agree that anthropomorphizing the other, it doesn't have to be just plants. It's a useful exercise in the sense that it does allow us to empathize with this other. And we find we find empathy easy with organisms that are similar to us. And if they got eyes, and if they smile, if they move, if they got legs of some kind.
Wag their tail at us.
That's right. There are elements that we literally, like physical elements that we recognize as like, oh, that's just like us. So if I'm smiling, you're smiling, and I call that smiling, even if maybe you're actually showing your teeth to tell me to go away, And so anthropomorphizing can become very dangerous if you are in the field and you're not reading the signals right. But it does allow, at least conceptually, it does allow a part of us to empathize with what we find difficult to empathize with, because it doesn't have those characteristics that we find easily recognized in ourselves. And plants, in a way, they are alien to us, because what is it? Where they don't have eyes, ears, and noses and legs like we do, and we are obsessed with ourselves. But that's fair enough. It's like that's really what we know. we know, I know me and barely. So,
Right.
spending a lifetime to know you and then let alone knowing the other, So
Right.
I don't find that, I think it's useful because in a way it just tells the story of like, we only have our human perspective. We are humans. And as a human, I only have this human perspective of life because that's what I am.
Right.
If next time I come as a dog, I will have the dog perspective. And maybe I've done all sorts of perspectives throughout my incarnations, if I believe in that. So,
Right.
but if for this life, as a human, I have the human filter to go through. And so how do I use that filter the best way possible? And I think anthropomorphizing allows us to do that. But, and here is the paradox. Anthropomorphizing also means that I still see myself as the center of the universe and I'm the most important thing and everything needs to be measured according to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
of course, because I only know really my own experience of what life is as the human, what else can I do? I think
Right.
that what we can do, and over the millennia we have done as humans, is to transcend that. And transcend that doesn't mean that you need to become like a Buddha enlightened or a Jesus Christ or anything like that. But we can transcend that by spending time with. And when we do, and we all know this, because actually it's a space that really deeply relaxes us and nurtures us. When we do, and it can be anything, it can be, you go to the ocean, you go to a forest. You don't even have to be like consciously aware, like, I'm going to spend time with this one tree, just being connected to the nature that is beyond the human shape, allows us to find a space that is very nurturing because it reminds us, even if it's unconscious, is reminding us that we are that nature. And when you enter that space, there is no need to anthropomorphize because you have already transcended the boundary that makes you the human only, and you are an expanded version of yourself as the self, not as the human self. Mm-hmm. And in that space, then if you practice enough, you can apply it also in small details. So then you can sit with a tree and just be with that tree and even become the tree for a while. Because you already are the tree, mm-hmm. and the tree is already you. And fundamentally, what I think and it's a conceptual thing. We are considering our system, the human body in particular, although it's obviously, again, not what the evidence of every day, every moment shows, but we are thinking of the system as a closed system. We think that the skin is closed, and we think that there's the me inside and all of that. But we're not closed, obviously. The skin is not closed. Mm-hmm. Everything is porous. But you see, if you subscribe, and we have for the last few centuries, if we subscribe to a vision of the human as closed, then you are separate from the other stuff that is outside you.
That's right.
And so then, of course, you feel like I can't connect with that. And the only way I can connect with that is by stretching myself and the idea that I have of myself and putting it onto someone else, and that you anthropomorphize, and that's fine. Mm. But what this is asking is like, don't worry so much about anthropomorphizing. Don't even worry so much about the other. Worry about the fact that you have a misconception of yourself, that you think you're a closed system and you're absolutely not. Mm. And then and you can, and it's so easy because you can just, the breath is the first thing that you can use. It's like, if you're closed, stop breathing then. And if you can't stop breathing, then who is breathing you?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then exactly. Suddenly you see the flow, it's everywhere. And suddenly it's easy, this boundary, it's easy to transcend, but the mental conditioning that is very useful for, it's been useful for the last 200 years to create the science that we know, to create the technology that we know, to create the world as we know it.
Right.
which is not doing very well because it's suffocating onto itself because it pretends to be closed when it's actually not.
Right.
So
Yeah. And it makes me think of like just the actual physical, literal experience of trees are literally breathing us.
that's right.
Trees and plants are breathing us in the ocean, right? But in the context of the tree,
Yep.
and it just hit me. I was telling Jen the other day how do we not walk around like with ornamenting ourselves with the image of a tree? Why do we not worship the tree? Because it literally is breathing us from the outside and the inside. And what else? The thought is, what else is it giving me as well as air? What else is coming into my body that then, how am I separate from the tree? How can I be separate from the tree? Because it literally is breathing me in and out.
That's right.
So,
Yeah. And
And you're not like,
when we can expand that perception of ourselves too, and sort of soften our edges, then nothing is as scary and we don't feel separate, and that it literally expanding our mind expands our bodies,
that's right.
those hard edges, or what, like you said, the closed system is much more porous. It's very cool. That's a beautiful way to say it, actually, how you said that. Yeah.
And it's very simple. If people find it too woo-woo to think about, the breath, oh, that's what the yoga tradition or whatever. Fine. You don't have to worry about your breath. Don't worry about that. It's okay. But then, there is another thing that we do all day, like most days, at least most of us do, and it's eating.
Mm-hmm.
And that eating, what are you eating? What is it that you're literally putting in?
right.
That's right. So, like, for example, I'm vegan. I'm pretty much like, I only eat plants. So
Right.
I know that I am more plant than ever before. And literally I am taking this other body, other shape, and inserting it into this body in this shape. And then, as we know, that food, that fuel rebuilds what I call my body, because it's changing and rebuilding all my cells, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I am literally made of plants, by plants, of plants, for plants, So
Yes.
And I guess what is missing in this link that we need to be careful about, the breath is very easy to see, the food may be not so easy these days, but we are fed and they're breathing us, but we are also breathing and feeding them. So because otherwise it's an upside down anthropocentric view. Like, first we are the evil guys that are, not caring for everyone else, and we are at the center of the universe. Then we put ourselves, we are at the bottom of the scales. Everyone is breathing us and supporting us. And, it's the same story, really. Like, we are always at the center. And the point is to decentralize us, because we are just part of the system. Like, we are not better or worse. We are just what we are. And everyone else is just what they are. And they should be honored and revered for what they are, not for lesser or better. And so, the trees breathe us and we breathe them.
Exactly. Absolutely. And, it makes me think of my next question. The history of the disconnect. When did, and I've been thinking a lot about this in this podcast, is when did me as the white woman living in this place right now, going back all of this time, and I kept going back and back and back, when did I lose this deep connection and deep understanding that I must have had at some point, right? Was it 500 years ago? Was it 1,000 years ago? And then your book mentions Aristotle. So can you give us like a sort of brief little rundown of what I'm talking about? Like, tell us about Aristotle for a minute and the potential that he created for this deep disconnect. Was this the beginning?
I mean, Aristotle was a philosopher, and we're talking about ancient Greece, and it was just pondering like everyone else. And I mean, we probably owe Aristotle all our way of thinking and knowing, but he also owes that to others before him. And Parmenides was another philosopher before him who basically was the foundation of all the others that followed him. And Aristotle is the child of, and we are the child of. And Aristotle was the one that one morning, this is how I see it, like one morning he must have got up with the wrong foot and he just decided, you know what, I'm gonna classify animal, plants, and humans. And he created this hierarchy of, needs in a way for life. And of course, the human is at the top and is the one that is, the intelligent being. And then there is the animal, which has movement, and therefore, and of course, you can see suddenly we are not the animal anymore, but we are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we already there's the human as a something else, and then the animals, and then of course, you go further down. So the animal is the one that is reacting to the environment, and then you go further down the scale or the pyramid, and you find the plants, and the plants are just there to reproduce and to be pretty and make flowers, and there is no sentience there. The plants are not sensitive, they don't feel anything anymore, like in that context. The animals are the ones that are feeling. And we are the ones that are thinking, basically. These very basic, and I'm not a philosopher, so I'm sure that if philosophers are listening, they'll be like, oh my God, she's so oversimplifying. I understand that. To me, that is a very clear sign of what then, it was a seed that was planted. It was just an idea. It didn't prove it right or wrong or anything. It was just like, this is what I think. And yet we have taken that and it became, you wait, 2 millennia and it becomes the standard of our science and our view. And I recently, and of course we are in a very Cartesian system still. And although that's changing very rapidly, I think, and it's a good sign. And recently I was talking to a friend of mine, a French friend of mine, and we were talking about the mind and cognition and stuff. And she said to me, do you know what is really interesting? That in French, we don't have a word for mind. Mind would be translated as esprit, which is spirit. So mind and spirit are the same word. So I thought, wait a second. So Descartes, when he was talking about cognitor, so the mind, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Well, maybe he didn't mean I think. I am spirit, therefore I am.
Wow.
Because he was French. And so I like to rewrite that this way.
Oh, wow.
And can you imagine though, if that was translated as I am spirit, therefore I am? What kind of society and civilization we would be?
Yeah, very different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there is no reason why we shouldn't write it that way. I mean, even if Descartes didn't mean it that way, it's like, why can we not write it that way now? Because I think that we need that. Right. So, yeah.
Absolutely. That's so fascinating. And it's like, it's like translating Latin, right? It's like, what is it really saying? There's a couple different ways you can spin things. So I just thought that was fascinating. And it was the first kind of time I was like, aha, this is like, whether Aristotle meant to set a course or not, it was set. And it's still very much alive today. And us humans were like, aha, we're on top. And that felt comfortable and good for us.
What it means also that the power of an idea.
Yes, absolutely.
But we are idea creators and storytellers. We have always been. So it's not like, oh, Aristotle did it. Oh dear, that's it. Too late. Now we're stuck with this. No, what it means is like that it's enough one powerful idea and the game is over. We change the story and this entire place is a different story. So even, I know that there is a lot of despair and a lot of dread even in the world at the moment. Like people are feeling hopeless and people are feeling like, I don't know what to do, climate change and blah, blah, disaster. I mean, I'm not minimizing that. There is an issue here. We have an elephant, a big elephant in the room. But
Right.
at the same time, we can tell the story that we want the future to be. And at the moment, we're telling, considering how powerful the stories and the ideas that we put and we set in motions are, we're telling constantly this story of disaster. It's like,
Right.
okay, until we can't tell any more stories. We should tell the stories of what we want the future to be.
100%. You're so right. Yeah.
And so no more
Yep.
disaster stories. We are all aware, okay, we created a
Yes.
situation that is not optimal
Right.
for most of us, including not just us as humans, but like most of the species on this planet.
Mhm.
And okay,
Right.
acknowledge that. Now, instead of
Right.
repeating that story and give it power to that story, it becomes more and more, because then that's how we materialize things. I mean, Aristotle was just waking up one morning and came up with this idea. And then it got repeated
Yeah.
enough time that now we believe that to be true, but it's not.
Right.
So we materialize this. So in the same way, we are materializing a future that we don't want.
Mhm.
So we need to start
Absolutely.
telling good stories and
That's right.
and give power to ideas. And when
Right.
people tells you, oh, you're just being naive or you're being romantic, it's like, I don't care. You can call me whatever you like. At the end
Right.
is what is the story that survive or doesn't that makes the difference. And I like to tell
Yep.
a story that is about thriving, not even survival,
Mhm.
thriving,
Right.
and where the human is actually using this opportunity to really transcend itself, transcend all ideas. These ideas are like millennia old, and we're done with that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of that, we're all careening toward the edge of a cliff.
That's right.
Let's stay here and connect with where we are in our own backyards, in our own forests. And, that makes me think of too, like, just sort of ending this with, is there anything, could you give us, well, let me start again. I think part of our understanding with this podcast is that people in general operate outside of the natural world, like we're talking about, right? We are disconnected to the ecosystems we actually operate in. Can you give us an example of, when I walk outside into my yard and into, the forest that I experience and my garden, what are plants offering us other than the beautiful rose or the soft green grass, or is what can we see in our own lives that plants are offering us on a daily basis?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are two things actually here. One is if we see ourselves as an apex predator, then we'd have to take that responsibility seriously. Apex predators are the one that basically have the leadership and the responsibility to make sure that everything remains in good balance. And when you remove them, the balance gets disturbed and everything goes a bit strange. So apex predators are really important in every ecological systems. That responsibility, it's important, and we haven't taken that seriously. Because what I said is that apex predators are responsible for the balance of the system. They don't take it, they don't ravage it, they don't, that is real leadership. You serve the system. So if we are apex predator, we need to start serving. We need a new leadership. We need to start serving the system, serving the community, the wider community, not just human, which means
Right.
that the needs and what is required to maintain the balance of the community comes before everything, including your own life, because that's what an apex predator does. That's what a leader does.
Right.
Instead, we have as leadership, we have these, half-baked, people who are not apex predators. They're just predators.
Right.
And so they're going in as predators without taking the responsibility of what it means to be at the peak of that system that requires, you've been placed there, and it requires your care.
Right. Right.
So that's one thing. And in that context, then you can be the apex predator of your own environment, whatever that is. And what it means is that you can be the caretaker, the custodian, the one that literally cares for that space. and you should give your life for any one of those that are under your care. And this is not just your children, but it's like all of the ones that are under your care are your children and are your responsibility. So if someone is trying to, poison the land, that's your responsibility. If someone is trying to cut more tree, that is your responsibility. And your responsibility is to teach and let the other understand why that's not acceptable. And this actually links back to very much what many of indigenous cultures have done for millennia.
Yeah,
absolutely. Someone that goes off, and the punishment here in Australia, I know that the punishment when people broke the rules were quite severe. And the reason why is because, again, the community and the balance is more important than the individual. And so you must make sure that the individual really understand that that behavior is absolutely not acceptable. And if you carry on, you will need to be removed. And I'm not for the death penalty, but there is this responsibility is way too big, because when you scale it up to the world scale, you see what happens when the responsibility is not taken. You risk to damage and kill everything. So you need to be removed. You're not fit for the environment.
Right.
So if we take this responsibility seriously, then each one of us can take responsibility for the space where we are in.
Yeah.
And telling the right stories is important in that space, because we want to move forward with everyone. Otherwise, we create new separations. So those ones that are actually, at least apparently, presumably, causing most trouble, they're the one that we really need to engage and show them, like, come and sit in the garden and come and connect and come and breathe and come and realize what it is that you're actually doing as a living entity in this system.
And tell new stories.
That's right.
True new stories.
That's right. Which are actually old stories. Very, very old stories.
Stories, that's right. And that's actually then that's what we're offering back. And that's the reciprocation of doing your job as as an apex predator. I love how you said this, like doing my job like the shark does it in the ocean.
That's right.
Like the bear does it in the forest with the salmon. Do your job perfectly. Be at like the trees do their jobs perfectly.
That's right.
They all do their job perfectly. We are the ones who need to learn to do our job perfectly in our own spaces.
That's right. And I think that that's the thing. I mean, literally, we are the last kid on the block. We are learning. We made a bit of a mess. And that's okay. And mom is very patient. She sends a couple of viruses, a couple of storms, and, she's just wiggling the shoulder, but we already freaked out. Oh, mom is angry. She's not angry. She's just, shivering a bit. And it's like, oh God, what are they doing? Oh, well. And, as we know, kids need to learn, and we are learning. And if we tell the story like this, we stop demonizing as well ourselves, because that's the other thing that is happening. Like, oh, we're so bad. Is that we are not bad or good. We are just haven't learned what it is to be human, and we are learning that. And hopefully we learn it before in the process, we don't destroy everything.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's beautifully said. I love that so much. So Monica, thank you so much for sharing your science and your stories and your profound experiences with us today. We are so grateful for your time, and we'll just keep opening our senses and our hearts to the beautiful plants of the world and really listening.
That's right. That's at the end is the only thing to do. And you be taught, you be given, you ask, what can we do with our plants, our roses? Like they are, they're just waiting. They talk to us all the time, but we're not listening. So it's just a matter of like really fine tuning our own listening system.
Yeah. And seeing them for really what they truly are and the energy we feel from them. And then we can continue to share their story.
That's right. Because as your podcast is called Kindred. That's really at the bottom. That's what it is. It's like we are here, we are kins, and we are not behaving very well towards our own brothers and sisters. humans and not
That's right.
humans. So in the end, it's like literally it's learning how to grow up a little bit and respect this relationship, not because we have to, but because we want to, because we cherish them, not because someone
Yeah.
said so, but because we love them.
That's right. That's exactly right. We love them. That is absolutely right. And they are our brothers and sisters.
And they
kindred,
love
so.
us so much. So otherwise they would have stopped giving us oxygen, you know. Like it was easy, like that's it, no more oxygen for you. Let's see how you go.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Let's see how you do when you can't breathe so well.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Monica.
Yeah,
I
amazing.
so appreciate it. And hopefully we can talk to you again someday. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And have a good night, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to the takeaway for Monica Gagliano. What a, oh gosh, an in-depth, inspiring, unexpected, beautiful conversation to have with her. Her knowledge and her empathy, her connecting all ideas together and new ideas. She's just such a fantastic speaker and thinker, and she really sparked a couple new thoughts for me, and then what I'll get to in a minute. But one of my takeaways that I loved was when she was talking about sort of the pros and cons of anthropomorphizing plants and animals, and how when we do that, the one thing she was saying that it keeps humans at the center of the universe, she was saying, and everything else needs to be measured according to me.
Right.
And I loved that idea that, she was saying that there's lots of good things about that because it sort of endears us to them. It connects us to them. It makes us think like there's what are the things that we are the same about, and then we care about them. Right. But that the other side of that is that everything then is it continuing to revolve around the human, and that's something we do a lot on this planet as humans. So I sort of love that reminder too. And another thing I wanted to talk about, which I really loved her discussion about intelligence in context to plants. And, she was saying how her definition is, intelligence means to choose between. And if you're talking about that in context to plants and animals and anything other than human, when you really think about choosing between, to me, that takes me to a level of an awareness or perception that they have and decision making that they have to do, and then they actually ultimately have to do something. So
right, that they have the ability to discern between things is
right. Like, do I grow this way or do I grow that way? And where is water? Do my roots grow that way or this way? And in the context of her talking about that amazing experiment she did with the little mimosa plants, they were choosing because of an awareness or perception they had of what was happening and what was coming. And I just loved that idea, and that, we really, and she was talking about how we need to expand our scope of what is intelligent beyond it in terms of human psychology, and how it really made me think that often just moving through the day, driving, walking, around, it just sort of like everyone's trying to get through their day, right? And everyone is trying to, in terms of like plants and animals, bugs, humans, and they're all choosing their way, and they have an intelligence and an awareness of themselves.
Right. Right. Because what else can you call it if you can't call it, if you don't call it intelligence, if they're making these decisions and they're choosing what would it be? But we just don't think about it. The same thing, harking back to what you said prior, I think, is that when we are always at the center, we just think we're the standard, the gold standard. You know what I mean?
It also makes me realize that why does our definition of intelligence so what is it? Like human centric. And
Right, exactly.
It can just be a simple term, meaning to choose between.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that we can build rocket ships, or we're philosophers, or we can think about the past, the present, and the future. It just means the ability to choose between. I just love how she just offered that in really simple terms. And she said, of course, there's a huge dialogue and argument ultimately, I think, about what intelligence means in a lot of different spaces. But I love that. And kind of in that context too, it made me think about her talking about our responsibility as humans, in terms of like apex predators, versus keystone species. And then what I would say is, like, I think we are considered hyper keystone species. And then thinking about what an apex predator is and how it operates. And like you and I were just talking about earlier, that an apex predator is something that manages its ecosystem for good. And it's like the boss of it. It's one of the key players keeping it all in balance, right? Like that's what a shark does in the ocean, and then versus like a keystone species that is like a wolf in Yellowstone. And then also, an apex predator is usually one, I think, that can't be eaten, right? They're at the top of the food chain type thing. And so the responsibility that they hold, they do it so perfectly, and they do it only for the good of their ecosystem, right?
Right. And they're serving the community rather than trying to make themselves the highest. And I loved how she actually in nature, apex predators are the most important thing is the well-being of the entire community. And that was fascinating too. Yeah.
No, it just puts the onus and sort of responsibility back on me to think, okay, so how am I operating within my ecosystem? And often, like us as hyper keystone species, we have the greatest impact on the planet, right? And a lot of what that means is we're impacting it on a very negative way.
Yeah.
But in that thought of the negativity sort of our actions on this planet, you had a thought about that, and about just how she was saying,
about
a different story.
Yeah, like that what she was talking about, that the idea of being careful how we speak about the state of things too. And she said, if we have to be careful that we're not materializing the future that we absolutely don't want, and that we have to start telling good stories, she said, and tell a story about thriving instead of just always the focus on the things that aren't working well. And I just thought it was a really interesting perspective, because you and I both studied a lot of Eastern philosophy for a long time, and just that idea of the power of intention and the power of words and all that part of it is, I love that she brings that part into the science too, that it's not actually, she's like, it's not woo-woo just because it's talking about intention or emotion. And I love that it's actually really important to remember that we can create the story that we want, kind of.
Right. Yep. And it really makes me think about what is Mother Nature's what is Mother Nature thinking about?
Yeah. And that was hilarious too when she said that. I don't know. I wrote this down right from her talking. Was she said, Mom, meaning Mother Nature, or nature, Mom isn't mad, she's just trying to get our attention.
That's right.
And, you might get a stern talking to because you need to be set straight, but that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. And that was, I loved what she was talking about too, is there is a lot of love there, and nature loves us, because if it didn't love us, we wouldn't be breathing anymore. Like, they're still offering us everything we need. I just thought that was very poetic and really beautiful. She's just trying to get your attention.
It's very important to bring that aspect into these conversations. And, I was thinking about that in terms of when we spoke with Dr. May Berenbaum, the entomologist, and just her thoughts, and when she was talking about ecosystem services, right? And what is the natural world working on a daily basis? It's all they do is to make this planet go round, and that we get to live here. We get to exist in such beauty and enjoyment, and what really, thinking then back to Monica, like what are plants offering us other than just food, or it's like then oxygen, then all of these things, and then what can we offer them? And to the point you were just saying, I think we've lost the reciprocal awareness of love in that conversation. And I think that was probably one of my favorite things that she was saying, was that Mother Nature loves us.
And we kind of know it, because like when she was talking about when you walk out through a beautiful forest, or you're staring at a lake or the ocean, like you feel that, and that is what that is. That is that exact experience we have. Is we just don't know, we haven't really necessarily thought about where it's coming from.
That's right. That's the energetic love coming from the natural world. When you go and stand among the sequoia trees, when you go to the Grand Canyon, when you go anywhere on this just spectacular planet, you feel that resounding, echoing energy. It's not just coming from your awareness of them, it's also coming from them to us.
Right. And that, I think so many people have had that experience of just like being moved to tears, being in a place, you just are overwhelmed with gratitude.
All right. Well, thanks again to Monica Gagliano for her time, for her love, for her science, for everything that she offers, a new perspective and a new awareness of how we can better connect to our outside world when literally you're stepping outside the door. So much appreciation and love for this conversation. And we will see you guys next time. Lots of love. Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jen, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And feel free to contact us through our website at kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find links to our socials, Patreon page, and show notes.